The Indigo Disk DLC compatibility is finally available on Pokemon Showdown after waiting day and night. Yeah, day and night, Kikari? Okay. Anyway, I know everybody's excited about all the new Pokemon and the unbanned Pokemon like Deoxys Speed, all that. However, there are some Pokemon that have returned and some Pokemon that have been in the game already that have been massively buffed with the DLC and cannot be overlooked how massive some of these buffs actually are. So I'm gonna go over all these massive buffs some Pokemon have gotten, how it's gonna impact their viability, and maybe they have a shot at OU, or will they be even better in OU? Now firstly, I want to start off with Latios. Latios has been an OU GOAT since Gen 5, because it was Ubers in Gen 3 and 4. It has been OU since Gen 5. It was not OU, it was OU in Gen 8, but it fell to UU and it was UUBL ending, or at the end of the generation. Mainly just because it was outclassed by Dragapult. Dragapult's faster, it has better step, it has better coverage, it has U-turn. There was little reason to use Latios over Dragapult, especially since Dragapult is faster and can threaten Latios as well. Now we might see Latios return to OU with this massive buffs it has got. Now first of all, it received a massive buff on its signature move, Luster Purge. Now if I remember correctly, this move, you might not even know what it is, because this move was never used before in any generation. Maybe as a fun gimmick, but not really serious at all. This move was very weak, 70 base power if I remember correctly, so there was not really a reason to use it over Psychic or Psyshock, especially with its very limited PP. Now this move, as you can see, has been buffed to 95 base power, which is the same, almost the same base power as Earthquake, same base power as Moonblast, 100% accurate as well, and that has a very good secondary effect. 50% chance to lower the target's special defense by 1 stage, which is gonna make it difficult for even Pokemon that are, have massive bulk on the special side or can resist the move. It's gonna be difficult to actually check Latios. I mean, even a Pokemon like a Steel type like Golden Go is gonna have trouble checking Latios after switching into Luster Purge and receiving that special defense drop. Pokemon like Heatran gonna have trouble as well. Now I will say that the PP is a bit of a downside, because like a common switch to Latios is Corvic Knight, which can resist both Draco Meteor and Luster Purge of course, and it has pressure, which means it's gonna be draining that Luster Purge PP even faster, so you gotta be careful about that. So it's not gonna be your a guaranteed way to break through special walls, as it does drain the PP very quickly. However, this is a massive buff. It's gonna make switching into Latios even more difficult if you're not a Pokemon that outright resists the move or a Steel type with massive bulk. Now aside from that, also Latias Mist Ball, pretty much the same move, but it's just a different signature move for Latias, also got the same buff, so don't worry. However, this Pokemon, it doesn't end here, because it now has Flip Turn. So this is massive for Latios, because now it can actually somewhat compete with Dragapult as well, especially with the base power buff in Luster Purge. But it's a pivoting move. I don't really think I need to explain a lot more. I will say though that a common switching to Latios is Heatran, and Dragapult can only either go for like Shadow Ball, which does like 30% to special defense of Heatran, or for U-turn, which is not gonna do a lot. Flip Turn, however, is super effective against Heatran. Now it's not gonna do massive damage because Latios' attack isn't that high and it's also not step, but if I'm guessing, it's gonna be doing like 25%, maybe 30% to Heatran, add up hazard damage, and you get that offensive momentum back on a Pokemon like Heatran. I think this is obviously a great buff for Latios, but especially like a switching against Heatran, which is hit for super effective damage. It's just a great buff for this Pokemon. You might see it rise to OU this generation again, which it does deserve. I mean, this is an amazing Pokemon. Now last buff, not as huge, but it also received Weather Ball. Might be fun for some weather teams as a coverage move. Don't see this, I don't think it's gonna be used that often though, it's more of a niche gimmicky pick. But still a buff nonetheless. However, these are the two main buffs you have to watch out for. Lust the Purge and Flip Turn. Also, for some reason, they gave this Pokemon Liquidation. Why? Do they really want it to be a water type? I mean, I get it's blue. But does it mean it needs all the water moves in the world? Anyway, it's a buff, I guess. Next up we got Weavile. Now, I've talked about this not too long ago because some moves were leaked. Now, it's now officially confirmed this Pokemon has Triple Axle back. If you played the Gen 8, you know how massive of a buff this is. Weavile was one of the best Pokemon back in Gen 8. Mainly because, you know, that stab combination, Triple Axle, knockoff. Now it has both. Because it got knockoff in DLC 1, of course. It also received Upper Hand, which is interesting for sure. It's gonna be, I don't think it's gonna be that good though. It's a niche option at best. It's good for countering a Pokemon like Extreme Speed, Normal, Dragonite. You might say, oh, there's a great move against King Gambit. You know, if you're not completely aware of what this move does, it's a fighting move, 65 base power. It doesn't say it here, but this move only works if your opponent is using a priority move. So it's a priority move to counter other priority moves, mainly just for VGC to counter fake out shenanigans. But it has its uses in singles, I suppose, though very niche. It's not gonna be very good against King Gambit for Weavile though, because no King Gambit is gonna use Sucker Punch against a Weavile, because it resists. It's always gonna go for Iron Head or Low Kick, whatever it's running. So Upper Hand's not gonna be good for King Gambit on this Pokemon. You would be better off using Ice Shard if you want some priority. It's only the only niche it has is against normal Extreme Speed Dragonite. You know, it's a buff nonetheless. However, Triple X is the main thing to take away from this. So Weavile, we might see it rise up back to OU. It's gonna have struggle against King Gambit though, so you're probably gonna need to run Low Kick or something that can deal with King Gambit consistently. Next up we got Sceptile. Now, it's technically, this is a massive buff. However, it's not gonna be used a lot. So this Pokemon received Shed-Tail. Now Shed-Tail, of course, is banned from OU and all tiers below. So if you want to use Shed-Tail on Sceptile, you have to go to Ubers. I don't know if this Pokemon is faster than Cyclizar. No, it's actually slower than Cyclizar. So even then you would be better off using Cyclizar if you want to use Shed-Tail. Still a massive buff though, cannot be overlooked. However, it doesn't have any applications, unfortunately. Next up we got Metagross. Now Metagross is not really an OU Pokemon, hasn't been for quite some generations. However, this Pokemon received some massive buffs that I think are worth talking about. First of all, it received Knockoff, which is, you know, obviously a great coverage option to cripple anything switching in. Aside from that, it received a great step option with Psychic Fangs this generation. Before you had to rely on Zen Headbutt, which is, you know, it's kind of weak, unreliable, and I mean that's basically it. And you had Psycho Cut, which is just very weak. Now you have Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs both stronger than those options. It's more reliable and it destroys screens. So this is a great buff for Metagross. Not to mention it received Stone Edge. It didn't have that before. I actually thought it did, but it didn't have Stone Edge before. So now it does. Before it only had Rock Slide. So now you can hit like flying types like Moltres and Zapdos for super effective damage without making contact as well. If you can hit the move, that is, because 80% accurate? I don't know about that. So yeah, it received 3 massive buffs, which is gonna be great for lower tiers at least. Also, my apologies, I almost forgot about this. I know people are gonna flame me if I forgot about this. It received Heavy Slam. Heavy Slam, you know, this Pokemon is very heavy. And no more power the heavier the user than the target. So this Pokemon is very heavy. It's gonna be probably 120 base power in a lot of cases. So this is a great step option for Metagross as well, because before that you had Meteor Mash, I think, as your strongest step, which is, you know, it's not a bad move, but it's very inaccurate, so it's kind of unreliable. Not a bad move at all, but, you know, having both Meteor Mash and Zen Headbutt as your main step options, both unreliable, not great. So now you have a 120 base power move in most cases. You have Psychic Fangs as well. So Massive buffs from Metagross. And also received Trailblaze. So that's cool, I guess. Next up we got Meowscarada. Meowscarada also received a massive buff with the DLC because it now got Triple Axle. Now this is huge for Meowscarada because before it's kind of struggled against flying types like Zapdos. Now you can use Triple Axle, KO the Zapdos and get paralyzed in the same turn. How great is that? Now all jokes aside though, this is still a massive buff for Meowscarada to hit those flying types. So I mean, like for example, you get Gliscor back, so you can nail Gliscor as well. Great buff from Meowscarada. Can't wait to see if Choice Band sets are gonna be back, maybe with Protein. Next up we got Iron Hands and some other electric types. Now Iron Hands finally got some good question mark electric physical stab. Supercell Slam. This is a new move. 100 base power, 95% accurate. Other electric types that receive this buff are Luxray and Electivire. Now, I think people are a little too hyped for this move. It's because before the best move you had was Wild Charge, which is 90 base power and does recoil damage. Now this Pokemon, this move is stronger. It's a little inaccurate, but it's manageable. The thing is with this move, if you don't know, if you miss, it's like kind of like jump kick. If you miss, you do like recoil damage to yourself. I don't know exactly what the damage is, but I'm gonna assume it's 50%. Now ground types are very common in the metagame. You got Great Tusk, you got Gliscor, which just got unbanned. Tinglu. Tinglu doesn't really want to switch into Iron Hands, but those are just your ground types, right? And spamming this move is not gonna be very reliable at all. It's gonna be very risky to just throw out this move and take 50%, especially for a Pokemon that is as bulky as Iron Hands. It really needs its HP to do its thing. So I'm skeptical about this move. I don't know if it's gonna be used over Wild Charge. I would not use it over Wild Charge. It's just too risky for my taste. However, it is a buff nonetheless. We're gonna see how good this move actually is though. Moltres also received a nice little buff. It received Scorching Sands, which it had in Gen 8, but now has it back, which is a great move to hit Pokemon like Heatran, for example, which it would otherwise be walled by. So not really a lot to say here, just a small little buff for Moltres. Next up we got Emboar. Now Emboar is not really a great Pokemon, however it got some massive buffs that I want to talk about, which is going to be great for lower tiers. First of all, it finally received Close Combat. So now it actually has some great fighting step. It also received Body Press, which is cool, although it's not going to be used a lot I think, but it did get Body Press. It got Knockoff as well, so great options right there too. And it did receive High Horsepower, but it has Earthquake, so that doesn't really matter. However, it received Close Combat and Knockoff, which I think are great options for Emboar if you're going to be using that. Electivire, and also another Pokemon that's not really great, but it received some massive buffs that I did not want to go unnoticed. So Electivire received obviously Supercell Slam. It also received Knockoff, it received Bulk Up, and it also received Trailblaze. So cool moves for Electivire. We might see it bump up in usage in lower tiers, or maybe it goes up a tier. Just some nice buffs for this Pokemon, well deserved as well. Keldeo also received a nice little buff, Vacuum Wave. Nothing really special here. A priority move that it can make use of with its special attack. Aside from that's just basically all that this Pokemon received. Just a cool little buff. Lastly, I want to talk about the Cineroar. It's not really a great Pokemon in OU or in singles at all. It's for like lower tiers it is. But just for the VGC people out here, this Pokemon received Helping Hand. So if this Pokemon wasn't already one of the best, it certainly now is one of the best. Those are really all the buffs I wanted to talk about for singles. Let me know your favorite buff. I think Latios and Metagross, my favorite Pokemon that got buffed in this generation. I think Latios, don't sleep on this Pokemon. It's probably gonna gonna get a lot of usage at the start of this generation or at the start of the DLC, but we might see it rise up somewhere down the line. Let me know your thoughts about these buffs. What Pokemon do you think should have been buffed that didn't? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.